Per usual, living on channels for educational purposes only is not intended as financial advice. It's Wednesday. Let's talk about some alts today. Don't have a lot of good news, but let's talk about what I'm watching, what I'm looking at, that may eventually turn a corner down the line, not anytime soon, for alt activity to pick up more than it is now. If we just look at what JP Morgan calls excess liquidity or excess savings, which is an interesting term, but if we look at the post-pandemic boom here relative to the trend over time, clearly related to stimulus, PPP loans, all that sort of fun stuff. And that was when we had probably the most insane alt season we may ever see. That isn't to say we won't see some sort of massive speculative activity come back in the retail space. I just wouldn't expect it to that degree. Again, in the future we may have CBDCs that you can only spend on X, Y, and Z, and that money will never hit in exchange. It will never hit cryptocurrencies, right? It'll be for very specific things that the government wants you to buy. But anyway, that liquidity is slowly being drained now, obviously, with inflation what it is, with just the lack of continued stimulus, wages, student loans, unemployment, whatever else, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is who's here? Where's their money? What are they doing with it? If you look at money market accounts, money market funds where you can earn 5.25% yield, continue to hit all-time highs. This is a bit of an older number. It's from Q2, but you get the point. The pre-pandemic baseline, probably somewhere around 5 trillion. Currently, we're at about 6 trillion. And the pre-2020 baseline, somewhere around 3 trillion. So there's a lot of money on the sidelines. Now, this has continued to grow over time, kind of irrespective of rates in the red here. But I wouldn't expect money to come out of money market funds if rates are high. I wouldn't expect people to risk money on alts necessarily if rates are high. If you break that down into different types of people, the types of people that probably need to send it to a money market account are probably the type of people who are going to be sending it to some offshore exchange for leverage, but that's a whole other conversation. Point is, until rates come down, I wouldn't expect a miracle. Every week, we look at this report from James Butterfill at CoinShares, and one thing to note here is the lack of AUM in non-Bitcoin, non-Ethereum products. Now there is a multi-asset bucket here that has a decent slug of AUM, but for the most part, anything down that list on the market cap table isn't getting inflows on the institutional side, right? We can also look at by country. United States has the most AUM. It's probably going to be the most important for institutional flows. So we don't quite have that yet. We don't have retail, we don't have institutional. If we look at volume on exchanges from the block here, across all exchanges that they track, monthly volume continues to make lower lows, essentially retracing all the way back to January 2021 or November 2020, somewhere in there. And if we look at it on an average, we've almost zeroed it out completely. I'd love to see what this looks like in log to sort of compare 2015 to 2019, right, to now, but very little activity, very little volume. Look at the DEX volume from Dune here, also down significantly, essentially back to January 2021 levels. So we could still go lower. We could still wring out this washcloth a little bit more until there's just absolutely no volume left whatsoever, but we aren't trending higher. We aren't bringing money or flows into the system. This is a chart I first saw, I think, from FundStrat years ago. This is one version of that, trying to measure alt season, essentially. It's looking at the percentage of altcoins with 3-month returns greater than Bitcoin. I don't know what Charles Edward is using in this specific equation, but it did pop up a little bit here in early September, which surprised me. But the point here being, we typically see alt season type activity when 90-day returns on a vast majority of coins are greater than Bitcoin. So we're definitely far from that as well. Like he says here, lower readings suggest capitulation, greater readings would suggest higher speculation. And, look, if you're in it for the long term, if you want to become a community member, now's the time to sign up, get your jacket, get your t-shirt, get your bumper sticker, your pen, whatever else, because you're going to be here a while, okay? Just get ready for that. I certainly wouldn't expect any massive rises in altcoins generally across the board until after halving, I think, at the soonest. If we look at Bitcoin dominance, somewhere around 50%. Another metric you can use for Bitcoin season versus altcoin season. Clearly when SPF was dumping VC funds into the ecosystem, you had stimmies, PPP loans getting dumped into the ecosystem outside of Bitcoin, NFTs, all sorts of fun stuff. Bitcoin dominance fell dramatically. So we're in the process of repairing that. Nature is healing. From a technical basis, I like this to somewhere around 60%, thereabouts. So still got a ways to go here. And again, this is going to be highly dependent on what this equation is, what's actually in this dominance equation, but still not favoring altcoins at the current time. And you can put a 200-day moving average on this, and that'll tell you the same, and it'll give you the same sort of outlook that, yes, don't expect, keep saying this, but don't expect alts to do well. It's just not the time. Here's rates on the top in the US versus alts. As many people have put two and two together, it's pretty obvious that when rates were zero and cash didn't have a place to go, much of it got stuffed into super risky, highly speculative bets, including altcoins. This is total market cap minus Bitcoin, minus ETH, minus stables. So as rates go up, money goes out of the system, market cap collapses a little bit. Even though volumes have come down to the January 2021 levels, market cap hasn't yet. Market cap is a terrible metric. Anyway, I won't get into that, but I do think this does go lower at this point. So pack your bags, y'all. We're going to Goblin Town. Very likely that that's the case. Now this may save itself in the range, but that's an if this then that situation. We got to have volume. We got to have flows. Stablecoin flows still flat, down, slightly up maybe week over week, but you really have to squint to see any of the inflows there. We still need stablecoin regulations that may help this. Now, if I'm Circle, here's my tinfoil hat. If I'm Circle, I'm lobbying extremely hard for some sort of rules that basically bar Tether from being used in the United States. Some sort of regulatory moat. We'll see if that actually happens. Now, what they could do is say that all stablecoins used in onshore exchanges need to be audited and have reserves on U.S. soil or something like that, right? And that may hinder Tether from operating in the U.S. But in any event, still essentially flat there. Tether up a little bit, maybe week over week. Looking at ETH, the ascending triangle is likely Dunsky. Now, I don't know if the market realizes that yet, but there's just no volume again, right? So we could just kind of drift here in the ocean till a shark comes and eats our leg, because until volume picks up, it doesn't really matter. But we are leaning bearish, continue to lean bearish. That hasn't changed. Till we're above 2,000, ETH is kind of just a forget about it for me. I do like shorts on ETH because of the alligator fractal. We crossed bearish at the end of July and continued to print support fractals that we broke through. Never broke above the resistance, the stop loss fractals, until late August. And currently, just the other day, it would be the first breach of a support fractal, horizontal, indicating short entry with this system. So short around 1620, whatever that is, and a stop loss somewhere around 1670. I think that's a pretty comfortable, cozy situation in the moment. Binance, tons of smoke. We'll see if it matters, because CZ could just shut down the exchange, and I don't think he would halt trading, but most of the trading of BNB is done on Binance, and this certainly looks like it's ready to eventually topple over here, and that would potentially cause a ripple of bad juju across the ecosystem, bad mojo jojo, whatever, just a domino effect of liquidations, let's say. So it's also one thing to watch out for in any position you're in now is, do we know what's going on with Binance legally yet? Has that been resolved? When there's nothing going on, right? And some big news event on arguably the biggest exchange in the world happens, right? That's going to affect prices. So definitely need to be careful if you're max leverage long right now and there's some negative news event catalyst, because things could get super ugly. Before I talk about any more altcoins in this video, Let me mention today's video sponsor, Kraken Pro. Kraken Pro is a complete overhaul of the Kraken trading experience with a one-stop shop for advanced and professional traders. Kraken Pro enables efficient trading execution across multiple markets with a UI that allows for unique optimization tailored to your trading style. You can check out Kraken Pro with the link in the description of this video. So if we look at some layer ones here on Kraken, just to show ETH with the cloud, it's also signaling, we are not bullish. You don't need me to tell you that. But one thing I have noticed is ETH BTC slowly but surely sort of making its way lower. One thing you'll notice with alts is, everything will kind of pull back and then BTC will regain a little bit more than the alts. And that's, I think, what we're seeing just across the board. But the beauty of the cloud is we can just rapidly click through 10 of these and just say, okay, we know what's going on. Solana, below the cloud, we know what's going on. We know that this is all sorts of failure on on a breakout of any kind. They just approved, the courts just approved FTX asset selling. So Sol is a big stack there. Yes, a lot of it is locked up. No, they're not going to sell it in one market order. But the ecosystem is aware that there's a lot of Sol that needs to be sold by the FTX custodians. So I would definitely stand clear of that in the near term and just wait till that's done. At the very least, wait till that's done before you make any decisions. Ripple back to below its breakout point at this point, where that news event happened. News events aren't enough to hold a trend. You need users, eyeballs, reasons to hold this thing, buy this thing, and I don't see any. I haven't seen any for years, regardless of what you'll see on social media, hype, PR, whatever else. I mean, Cardano is the same thing in my eyes. Lots of hype and no substance. And you could say the same thing about that for a lot of these layer ones. Like, look, you got to give them props for coming out here, trying to take ETH's thunder, trying to be an EVM vampire and get users, but it just hasn't sustained. As bad as the activity is on ETH, which arguably in a bear market, it's not bad right now. It's certainly much worse on any of these other layer ones like Polkadot. Does not look, bullish, no matter what you want to think about it, right? No matter how you can't force me to be bullish on this. One thing you could say for some of these charts is a bullish divergence, but you don't even see that here on DOT. I would much rather just save myself some pain, wait for this thing to be back above the daily cloud to have a chance, at least. Does not look happy down here on the USD pair. Same for Litecoin. Again, I mean, who uses Litecoin? Who buys and holds Litecoin? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know why anybody would want to trade that thing, especially in an off season, if you will, for crypto. ADA also below the cloud. Maybe a weak bull div there, but not enough for me to be convinced of anything. Still down significantly from highs in 2022, and there's just, who's here, right? Think about ETH, think about Sol. Even if you're an ETH maxi, at least Sol has, by the looks of it, devs and a semblance of a community. Maybe I'm just not in these circles, but I do not see anybody talking about any other layer one at all. BCH, I'm guessing, on its retracement path still certainly doesn't look bullish. Again, I don't know who buys this thing ever for any reason. Stellar, same thing, almost the same spot. Again, it's just, now is not the time, for me anyway, right? Now, Tron's a little bit different because it's held up decently well. As a chain, Tron is highly centralized, so it's hard to know what exactly is going on here. Yes, they have a ton of stablecoin volume. Yes, Asia loves Tron. Trend-wise, it looks okay. Doesn't look terrible. Certainly better than most everything else that you'll see on the layer one side of things. AVAX, that descending triangle continues to play out, continues to just look very bad for AVAX. You could argue a weak bullish divergence here. You'd probably want to see some activity in very oversold territory. On RSI, my RSI is on 30, that's why it probably looks a little different than yours, but I'm just looking at the monthly RSI versus the 2-week RSI. So not quite there yet. Maybe AVAX to 5, maybe Solana to 10, maybe Cardano to 15 cents, right? if I wanted to put bids on the book, that's where I would do it. Extremely low down there. I mean, dot, any 50% level down from here, probably reasonable on some of these layer ones that just don't have any pizzazz or activity. I mean, Tezos, remember Tezos? Does anybody talk about Tezos anymore? I don't ever hear about it. Cloud is telling you all you need to know. Just down, down, down. 30 cents. Sure. Maybe make a bid there where we currently sit, but no bullish momentum whatsoever. DeFi may be a slightly different story. At least they're grabbing headlines and making waves in this real world asset movement. We'll see if anybody bites on that over time, but most of DeFi has pulled back considerably. I mean, Curve is below 40 cents where a lot of those OTC deals took place. AKT pulling back here substantially from highs. And that's kind of the problem with alts. Holding them over a long period of time in a bearish environment typically does not give you a long period of time to make a decision on whether or not you want to be a community member, right? Do I like the pens? I don't know. Notepads, maybe, but right. So this creates this, Eiffel Tower behavior, whatever chart pattern you want to think of. Price goes up quickly. There's no real sustained reason to buy and hold this thing. Early on, proof of stake, I mean, that's what it was for. It was to encourage buy and hold. It was to sell people a promise and a dream that they could get a yield on something along with volatility. But anyway, I don't see bullish vibes from AKT at the moment. Maker looks okay. I'm just looking at price position relative to Cloud, and is there any sort of warning sign chart pattern here? Looks okay. Doesn't look terrible, right? Certainly stronger than almost everything I've seen so far. Comp had that head and shoulders. I mean, first it had this. Call this whatever you want. Maybe it's some sort of channel that didn't quite break out, sort of broke out, and then didn't go anywhere, but still below the Cloud. Still doesn't look great. You could argue a pretty big divergence here on the TK lines, and maybe just wait for lows down here for some sort of bid, but certainly no bullish momentum there at the moment. SNX, another coin that sort of had a range and then didn't quite go anywhere. Certainly not for me. No momentum there. A reason to hold that thing. Curve continues continues to just not be happy. Now, I think this token, after the hack, after those OTC sales, is just in a lot of trouble over time. The lower this goes, the more likely the OTC holders are going to want to exit. And the higher this goes, the more likely the OTC holders are going to want to exit. And they're going to sort of hold the price hostage. They represent whales at this point, and just something to consider. So until you see such and such has sold their Curve stack, right? Much like the FTX assets, I would just stay far away from this thing. Love Curve as a protocol, pillar of DeFi, but the token itself is in trouble here. Air, haven't seen or heard of this one. Looks like it's getting some volume today. Don't know anything about it. Somebody in the comments is going to have to help me out here. It almost looks like it has some sort of pattern here. Megaphone-ish. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Never heard of it. Big volume on Kraken today. Aave, much like AVAX, descending triangle, sort of risking lower lows. Doesn't quite look happy at this level, much like everything. Sushi, haven't looked at that one in a while. Also just nothing but down. And again, I'm just looking at the Cloud, right? Boom, instant. You know exactly what's going on. It's bearish, leave it alone. Not much else to say. I want to look at Link, still flat. Unexciting until it's around, 850. You can set alerts for that on Kraken. But this could keep ranging for a long time. It could break lows. The least likely immediately would be anything on the higher end. So really no reason, I don't think, to sit into that thing over time. Adam continues to be very angry and in a parabolic downtrend. So certainly nothing I would want to touch in the moment. And unfortunately, there just isn't much here. I'm only looking at EOS because it's on Kraken, but otherwise I wouldn't even bother. A lot of volume though on Kraken. Matic also looks angry. Let's look at lastly Matic BTC. That was one that was kind of holding a level. Still kind of at that level, and does not look happy. So look, I wish I had better news. I wish I could say we're all going to be rich. We're all going to get Lambos and girlfriends in the next 3 days. But, I just don't see that. So if you've got a different opinion, let me know in the comments. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.